4:01 on Wednesday, December 5th, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Tallahassee City Commission. Let me welcome you to your City Hall and to your city chambers. First and foremost, for the invocation, I would like to introduce my good friend, Rabbi Romberg, who is here to provide the invocation. Rabbi Romberg from Temple Israel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I actually do the prayer itself, I do want to take a moment to express not just Temple Israel's thanks, but actually the thanks of the entire Jewish community of Tallahassee. As most of you remember, several weeks back of the tragedy that happened in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, City Manager Goad and Police Chief DeLeo reached out to us in a very, very deep and important way. And at a time when our community was feeling so threatened, they helped us to feel much safer and to realize that this is an amazing community and that we are so grateful that Tallahassee is our city. And so we also want to offer congratulations not only to our new mayor, but to our two new commissioners, Commissioners Matt Lowe and Williams-Cox. So again, from the Jewish community, welcome. I like to put any prayer that I do in the context of the biblical reading being read and talked about in Jewish congregations around the world. It's the same everywhere. And this week it's the story of Joseph. Joseph being called out of prison to come and interpret the dreams that Pharaoh had. Pharaoh's dreams were dreams of two potential futures: a future of prosperity and a future of famine. And Joseph comes and he interprets the dreams and tells Pharaoh what would be the proper way to handle these potential futures. And when Pharaoh offers the position to Joseph, he does so not because of Joseph himself, but because Joseph acknowledged that it was actually God who was doing the interpretation, and God who drives things, not Joseph. And so we pray, dearest God, we thank you for those who serve on this commission, both the ones who were recently elected and those that have been serving for a number of years. And we pray that they will take the dreams of our city and know how best to handle those times of famine and also how best to handle those times of prosperity. We thank you for their willingness to serve us. We also want to thank and point out the women's soccer team at FSU and congratulate them for winning a national championship, because we are so proud to live in this city and they have represented us so well. We also pray for a wonderful future, one that this city is so capable of, moving us from a time of worriness, a time of uncaring, to a time of caring, a time in which our best qualities come forth to make our community the top way that it possibly can. As it says in Psalms, may the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Rabbi Romberg, and happy Hanukkah. Mr. Manager, do we have any modifications to the agenda this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 5.0 is a special presentation has been added to your agenda. Also, attachments numbered 3 and 4 to agenda item 1304 have been updated to correct the combined schedule of fund balance and notes. This change does not have an impact on the closeout results.
Excellent. For the official adoption of the modifications, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Cox-Williams. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, for my first proclamation of mayor, this is going to be a fun one, and I would like to ask any of my colleagues that would like to come join me down at the podium to please do so. Folks, this is the best part of the job right here, I'm telling you. So as we all know, we are very proud of the university community here in the city of Tallahassee, and we definitely have something to celebrate. And at this time, I would like for you to stand and join me in welcoming the 2018 Women's National Soccer Champion, the Florida State University Ladies and gentlemen, standing before you are the national champs, and we could not be prouder of you. On behalf of the city of Tallahassee and my colleagues, and I'm going to give my colleagues an opportunity to say a couple of words as well. Congratulations. Now, what I want you to know is that not only are they the best athletes, obviously, in the nation, not only did they win the national championship, this team also represents a collective 3.2 GPA on campus, one of the highest. And it is my understanding that literally after the game, you were on a plane coming back and studying for final exams. Congratulations. So I have the distinct honor and privilege of presenting this proclamation. But first, let me also take a second to recognize our athletic director, David Coburn, who is with us today, too. Dr. Coburn, where? In the back. Wonderful. So, ladies, from the governing body of the city of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas the Florida State University women's soccer team defeated the University of North Carolina 1-0 to win the 2018 NCAA Women's College Cup, and whereas it is the Seminoles' second College Cup title in the school's history, and whereas it is Florida State University's second overall national title in 6 months, and whereas during the tournament, Florida State University was able to shut out Stanford and North Carolina, two of the most potent offenses in college soccer. And whereas Dallas Dorsey, where's Dallas? Step forward, Dallas. Who netted the only goal of the game, was named the College Cup's most outstanding offensive player. Yeah. Jalen Howell. Where's Jalen? Step forward. Jalen was honored as the most outstanding defensive player. And whereas they, along with, please step forward as I mention your name, Malia Berkeley, Gabby Carl, Natalia Kutka. Did I pronounce that right? Kutka? How do you pronounce it? Kuika. Let me tell you, you won a national championship. I'm going to get your name straight, okay? Kuika and Caroline Jeffers were named to the NCAA All-Tournament team. And whereas these student athletes represent the dedication required to excel both on the field and in the classroom, and whereas Gabby Carl received the NCAA's Elite 90 Award given to the student athlete with the highest GPA at the 2018 Women's College Cup, and whereas the 2018 celebrates 50 years of women's athletics at Florida State University, and whereas the city of Tallahassee congratulates the Florida State University players and coaches for their success as the 2018 NCAA Women's College Cup champions, now, therefore, I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, do hereby recognize with my colleagues of the Tallahassee City Commission, Florida State University women's soccer team for its great accomplishment in winning the 2018 Women's College Cup, signed by me, John Daly, dated today, December 5th. Ladies, congratulations. Dr. Coburn, the athletic director for Florida State University, would you please come forward? But I would like to ask the team captains to come and receive this proclamation on behalf of the city of Tallahassee. Dr. Coburn, podium's yours.
Thank you very much for coming here today to honor this remarkable team. I wanted to start by talking about Gabby a minute. The pre-game banquet, you're sitting there with Stanford, UNC, Georgetown in the room, and she walks off with the Scholar Athlete Award.
All right.
Yeah, this is a team of elite athletes from all around the nation and around the world. National championships are just so hard to win, ladies and gentlemen, so very hard. And the gauntlet this team had to run to play Duke, UVA, and UNC in a row in the ACC tournament, and then to play USC, Penn State, Stanford, and UNC again to win a national championship. That's murderer's row right there. There are so many national championships in that list of teams they beat that it's difficult to count. And if you had asked me 5 weeks ago if we could beat UNC twice on what is essentially their home field, I would have said very difficult to do, very difficult. But this bunch did it, and they did it after going through 5 ACL tears and a season-ending injury to their starting keeper. So you talk about mental toughness and resilience, this bunch has it. We're so proud of them, and we're so proud of their coaches, who unfortunately Coach K and his team are out. I'll give you one guess where they are. They're recruiting. But they're looking for players. But we have a couple here we're going to ask to come forward and speak to you. Natalie Huica and Olivia Bergau. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Olivia Bergau.
Hi, I'm Natalia Glica.
First and foremost, we just want to say thank you so much for inviting us here. We appreciate the support that the community gives us, and we wouldn't do what we do without you guys. We are also so blessed that we were able to represent Florida State in the way that we did during such a special year for female athletics, 50 years strong. So again, just thank you for having us, and go Noles.
Go Noles.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies, once again, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We're extremely proud of you, and congratulations, and bring it home again next year. All right. Thank y'all. Oh, yeah. I didn't know if we... Hey, I'm new at this, Curtis. That's why I'm looking out for you like that. There we go.
Yeah, let's squeeze in a little bit.
Who do you need?
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Woo!
Makes note, Mr. Maddox decided to forego his Division I eligibility to concentrate on the football.
Please be careful. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I got everybody in.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Mr. Manager, do we have any announcements?
No, sir. No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we are at the part of the agenda for citizen input on agenda items. Ms. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any citizens that want to be heard?
Mayor, we do have, at this point, I have 3 speakers who've requested opportunity to speak. The first will be Stanley Sims. I'll ask speakers to approach the microphone there in the middle of the room. Each speaker, if you would give your name and address as you begin, that would be appreciated. You'll have 3 minutes for remarks, and the light immediately in front of you will start green and ultimately go to red when 3 minutes have expired. Reverend Sims is speaking on item 1301, Public Safety Update.
Pastor Sims, welcome to your city commission.
Hey, congratulations, Mayor. Congratulations to you, Commissioner Matlow and Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. I want to use the words today that I heard of our former President George Bush when he was utilizing his father. His message was that your role in life, not that you give your children a bigger house or a bigger bank account, but that you give them a better community to live in. And so with that, I wish you well on your journey. I came today to really follow up my conversation I had with Mr. Matlow and Commissioner Curtis Richardson. You remember the challenges we had when we had various healthcare disparities over in Gaston County. You led up that initiative of the Healthcare Commission we thought was a good idea until we wanted to bring it all the people together. And so Commissioner Richardson had the fortitude to go out and to solicit the help of Florida A&M University, the Institute of Public Health, where they came in and did a needs assessment for Gaston. And the reason I went there is because the way Dr. Cynthia Harris and Dr. Fran Close implemented this project, Commissioner Cox, is she just didn't go in and do the needs assessment. First she did what exactly you said last night in that community conversation. She brought all us together and that lived in that community, ones that was alienated, the Ryers, she brought the Stanley Sims, she brought the Dr. Holloman, she brought all of the professors, and we were able to come together on a consensus there before we started out with that assessment. And so I didn't want to waste my time on the relevance of that police station there on the south side, but I wanted to spend my time today about the implementation, because it is the distortion, or it is my view, that what we call community engagement is when we get where the city seems to gather people that agree with them. And so when we were with that needs assessment, Curtis, you went to some of those meetings, but she created this parking lot that anything that was divisive had to go to the parking lot. And I don't know how she did it, but she kept that stuff in the parking lot and kept us focused on our goals. And I think with the division or some wanting this and some wanting there, I think that we need to look at a better implementation plan that gives people a fair, clean, open environment to be who they are.
You're at 3 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pastor Sims.
Next speaker is Dr. Holyfield. He'll be followed by Darwin Gamble.
Dr. Hollifield, it's great to see you. You don't mind your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. Congratulations for the folks who won. And I hope this doesn't really come out of my time. I'm going to take a little longer anyhow. But I'd like to really thank Gillum. You know, we've had a lot of conflict. He even turned off my microphone on one occasion. But it takes something to go out there and join the battle. And this is what he did, and I think he should be applauded for that. Okay, dealing with the real. Is our definition of crime far too myopic? Are we way too nearsighted? For example, is it criminal for all these black babies to die before their time, even though Leon County is a relatively rich county? After all, we are not Gadsden, and Gretna is not in Leon County. Not that I have anything against Gaston County or Gretna. Yet, there are areas of Leon County where poverty is all pervasive. Is it criminal, getting back to the definition of criminality, that economic segregation, income inequality, and income immobility in Tallahassee is among the worst in the country? Is it criminal that Census Tract 10.01 in South City has a childhood poverty rate as high as 80.1%? Think about that, 80.1%. Childhood poverty, Census Tract 10.01. Meanwhile, the CRA gives millions to the rich who don't need it. Why is all this money going to the Doubletree Hotel, the Seminole Boosters, Ron Sachs, and too many other rich people to count? Does this mean that the CRA has actually contributed to economic segregation, income inequality, and income immobility? And now the chamber-driven white power structure says that what the black community needs is a police station on the south side.
Dr. Hallfield, your 3 minutes are up. Just please be mindful. And
Okay, maybe another minute. Really, we have 100% of the police surveillance cameras on the south side. Yet who is able to truthfully say that the south side has 100% of the crime in Leon County? Why are there no such cameras in Benton? Are these cameras a relic from white supremacy and Jim Crow? Are these cameras derived from a racist assumption that black people are inherently more criminal? As for the police, I appreciate the important work that they do. The risk that they take should never be taken for granted. However, many black people are scared of them. In a town typified by increasing white gentrification, many white people love calling the police on blacks. Don't forget the 60-year-old black grandmother tased by the police for walking on the street with no sidewalks. On May 10th, 2017, Rob Renzi, a powerful white man from the Chamber's Leadership Tallahassee and CEO of Big Bend Cares and CarePoint, threatened to call the police on me.
Mayor, that's 4.5 if you...
Okay, 30 more seconds.
please wrap up your comments.
Okay,
Dr.
threatened to call, I will, threatened to call the police on me for attending a meeting at TCC. On October 26, 2017, Big Bend Cares and CarePoint called 2 armed Tallahassee police on me for attending a ribbon cutting. I was threatened with arrest, and this is the ended up. Further, Big Bend Cares and CarePoint have banned me and Sylvia Hubbard, a 60-year-old black great-grandmother, from that property for the rest of our lives. Is this any different from the way blacks were treated in apartheid South Africa? The answer is a resounding no. Blacks need to be treated with the same dignity and respect as our white counterparts, a police station on the south side is nowhere near the top of our list. Thank you.
Dr. Holyfield, thank you for your comments.
The next speaker and the only remaining speaker I have at this portion of the meeting is Darwin Gamble, also on item 1301.
Mr. Gamble, it's great to see you. Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Darwin Gamble, 1248 Halifax Court. It's good to see all of you too. I'm a member of several organizations, including the Tallahassee Community Action Committee, and I have what I believe is a modest request regarding the new proposed public safety campus. That request is the Commission direct the city manager to halt all negotiations related to that public safety campus for now. And then the Commission should tell the citizens why we need this public safety campus, why it isn't called the Tallahassee Police Headquarters, which is really what it is, and why it really has to go on the south side of Tallahassee. And I'm basing that on several things. First of all, we don't know really how we got here. We don't know, for example, if the city considered renovating the current facility and why they rejected that alternative. We don't know if the city considered other locations for the new facility and why those locations were rejected. We don't know if the city considered maybe multiple locations, as some have suggested, instead of one big facility, and why that alternative was rejected. I think if the city were going to spend more than $50 million on just about anything else, we would have a lot more information on how that decision was arrived at. Second, some of you attended a meeting that County Commissioner Bill Proctor called back in October at the Amtrak station. There was standing room only in the community room, and there were a lot of South Side residents there. And the South Side residents seem to be deeply divided on this issue. Some folks absolutely do not want that facility in that area. Some do want it. The ones who do want it seem to think it's going to reduce crime in that part of the city, and or that it's some kind of a big economic development project. Frankly, folks, I don't think there's much evidence out there to support either one of those assertions. Also during that meeting, I found out that the public involvement related to this project was mainly confined to the South Side. Well, I'm sorry, we have 190,000 residents in the entire city. This decision affects all of us. I think everybody should be able to weigh in. So anyway, those are the bases of my modest request. Any questions?
Mr. Gamble, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Certainly do appreciate it. Is there any other citizen that has joined us that has not had a chance to fill out a card that would like to have the opportunity to speak?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, Commissioner Mello.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Sims, Mr. Gamble, and Dr. Holyfield for taking time out of their day to come down here and address their concerns with us. I know there have been lots of community conversations about trying to open up government and be more accessible, and I hope coming forward we can actually fill that role and bring the City Commission closer to the community when we decide on projects like this. So thank you for your time.
Point well taken. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, let's move on. We're on item number 8.01, appearances by City Commission, appointed boards and committees, and other governments. Mr. Manager, do we have any scheduled appearances?
No, Mr. Mayor, we do not.
We are on the consent agenda item. Has any of the items on the consent agenda, have any items been pulled?
No, sir.
It's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda item signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. We are now on the City Commission appointments. Mr. Manager, will you introduce this item for us, please?
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to. Mayor and Commissioners, several regional and local boards require representation of the City Commission. These boards include the Capital Regional Transportation Agency, also known as the CRTPA, the Appalachia Regional Planning Council, the Tourist Development Council, often referred to as the TDC, and the Downtown Improvement Authority, known as the DIA. With the recent change in City Commission seats 3 and 5, several board seats are open. Specifically, 2 appointments are needed for the CRTPA, 1 for the ARPC, that's the Appalachia Regional Planning Council, 1 for the TDC, and 1 for the DIA. If you would like, I can pull up a slide to help us walk through this, but we're looking for your discussion and appointment to those vacancies that have been created.
Okay, so let me, go ahead, Commissioner Maddox.
Mr. Mayor, I serve currently on the CRTPA and the Tourist Development Council. I'd like to continue serving on the Tourist Development Council, but give someone else an opportunity to sit on CRTPA.
Okay. Do we have one appointment or two appointments to the Tourist Development Council?
That would create two.
Okay.
Commissioner Maddox's
One.
request, it would be one, and then we would have one additional that was vacated.
Is there anyone else that's interested in serving on the Tourist Development Council, first and foremost?
Mr. Mayor, I would be honored to serve.
Wonderful. Seeing Commissioner Maddox, Matlow, will you make a motion to appoint Commissioner Maddox and Commissioner Williams-Cox to the Tourist Development Council?
So moved.
Seconded by Commissioner Richardson. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Approved unanimously. The CRTPA consists of 3 members that need to be appointed. Commissioner Richardson, you currently serve. Are you interested in continuing?
I will continue to give some continuity to our representation.
I think that's very important. Thank you for your willingness to continue. Is there anyone else that's interested in serving? Commissioner Matlow, Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Yeah, I'd be honored to serve.
I'm sorry?
I'd be honored to serve.
I move that we reappoint Commissioner Richardson and add Commissioner Matlow to the CRPTA.
One more. Commissioner Williams-Cox?
I would be honored to serve.
Excellent. Motion's been made by Commissioner, is that an appropriate motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. No further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. For the Downtown Improvement Authority, is there anyone that is interested in serving on that position? Commissioner Matlow?
Absolutely would.
Sounds good. Mayor Pro Tem makes the motion for Commissioner Matlow.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richardson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously. Finally, for the Appalachia Regional Planning Council, we need one appointment. Is there a commissioner that's interested in serving?
I'd like to move Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox.
Commissioner Williams-Cox? Sounds great. Fantastic.
Seconded.
Probably moved by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Excellent. Thank you all very much for serving in those capacities. I know you'll do an absolutely fantastic job. We are now on item number 12, the introductions of ordinances. Ms. Jackson, I'm going to turn it over to you for the introduction and the official reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 12.01 is the introduction of ordinance number 18-0-35, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, relating to plan unit developments, amending definition of plan unit development contained in Section 1-2 of the Land Development Code, amending Section 10-165C1H concerning amendments to plan unit developments, amending Section 10-165F concerning status of previously approved plan unit developments, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date. The first and only public hearing is scheduled for January 30th, 2019 at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall.
Excellent. It's been properly read into the record. Are there any questions? New commissioners, any questions on that item? Excellent. Moving on. We're under policy formation and direction 13.01. Mr. Manager, will you please introduce this item for the public safety update?
I will. Thank you, sir. Mayor Commissioners, Deputy Chief Forsyth is here tonight to provide an update on the current crime stats. Through October of 2018, we recently saw a report through mid-year which indicated that the number of crimes in Tallahassee were well down compared to the prior year. We have data now through October of 2018. We also have an update on the body-worn cameras, our community engagement efforts, and other significant case updates, as well as the status of the public safety campus. And just to add a little extra context to this, we have been providing updates on our public safety status as a priority of the City Commission for a little over a year now. We'll continue to do so as it's a priority of you and the City Commission. So with that, Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief, it's great to see you.
You too. Thank you. All right, I'm going to give you a couple updates and kind of a progress report on our crime stats. So as we move forward on the crime stats, we have last year, of course, 2017 UCR was our lowest in the previous 5 years. So this report here is for 2018, January through October. So far for violent crimes, compared to 2017 for the same time period, we're down 6.3%. For property crimes, we're down 7.3%. And overall combined, that's about a 7.2 reduction for 2018 as compared to 2017. So at this point so far, 2018 UCR is trending to be lower than even 2017, which is good news.
Very good news.
Okay, moving on to the public safety campus. The city continues to work toward the development of a community-based public safety campus that will serve as the headquarters for the Tallahassee Police Department. The need for a new facility was identified in our TPD strategic plan, or 5-year plan, 2016 through 2020. And the intent is to create an effective project management structure to design and build a new public safety facility founded in the community policing philosophy that focuses on community engagement. The public safety campus will be designed to create an atmosphere of communication and collaboration while providing the resources for our officers and staff to meet the needs and expectations of our community. So just kind of give you a quick timeline of where we've been and where we're at with our public safety campus. Fall 2017, spatial needs analysis was completed at TPD for our future needs. January 10th, 2018, a new public safety campus was identified as a priority at the commission retreat, with an emphasis on placing the facility on the south side of Tallahassee to focus on community engagement and support economic revitalization. February 28th, 2018, the City Commission authorized staff to issue an RFP for the acquisition of real estate for a public safety campus along South Monroe Street or Orange Avenue corridors. May 23rd of this year, the City Commission authorized staff to issue RFQs for architect and design, engineering and construction manager at risk services. In October this year, the Commission approved funding for the land acquisition and relocation assistance for current tenants. And just last month, the City Commission authorized staff to negotiate a service contract with a recommended vendor for the construction manager at risk. Case updates, there's several case updates within the agenda item. One in particular I just want to touch on real quick, and it kind of just speaks to the officers themselves and the jobs they do each and every day out there in the community. This one occurred on November 4th down at Place Sports Bar, 2020 West Pensacola Street. One of the officers was working, overheard a disturbance inside, and several males scattered from out the club itself were running. Luckily, a witness was there and told officers that one of the persons was kind of running towards the car, and they were concerned that they may get a firearm. They were all three ejected from the club. The officer saw the single male kind of pacing back and forth by his car, open the car door, go inside, and retrieve something. This individual came running back towards the club. The officer interceded, stopped that person, and could immediately see that he had a firearm in his right hand. Gave commands, and the person was taken into custody without any further incident. But just kind of shows how the restraint sometimes that the officers need to employ out there in those situations in a split second. And if you caught the date, November 4th, that was just the day after our hot yoga incident on Thomasville Road. So no doubt he stopped probably something else from a retribution shooting from occurring. Moving on to body camera update. Again, I just want to provide you a timeline, kind of where we've been and currently where we're at, our status report. So in February 2017, the Tallahassee Police Department, with the support of the City Commission, applied for the body-worn camera policy and implementation program grant with the Department of Justice. October 17 of that year, we were notified that we were granted that grant, awarded that grant. So the police department, along with staff from Technology and Innovations, began testing and evaluating the Axon 2 body camera, which is the one I'm currently wearing. And along with that, there was some enhanced equipment that we tested as well. One was for the taser, which is a battery that basically has a Bluetooth capability that kind of, when you pull the taser out and you turn the taser on, the camera automatically turns on itself without any further action from the officer. So the testing evaluation went good. We have since contracted with Axon Enterprises, and we've trained all our officers, and we have everybody that's a sworn person, excluding a few exceptions, are wearing body cameras now, which is around 381 officers at this point. We're doing one further testing on what we call a signal sidearm. That's another piece of equipment that's basically attached to the holster itself. It's a wireless capability that when the firearm is pulled from the holster itself, again, it triggers the camera on without the officer having to do any further action. And we're, like I said, we're in that evaluation period at this point here. And once that's concluded, we'll be able to make a decision on that and move forward. And I think Axon looks at probably doing full implementation as far as production in January of 19 on that. And then the last thing is the community engagement. That's something that the police department takes very seriously. And we try to engage the community, be a part of the community, attend events all over the place. And in the agenda item, it lists 35 listed community engagement. And that's really a scratch at the surface of what we do on a day-to-day basis out there. And you can see even through October, some of the dates listed, we had to take a brief introduction there with Hurricane Michael when it decided to come to Tallahassee. But even that, within a couple of days afterwards, we're back in the community again, doing officer-friendly at churches and community meetings, back like we normally do. So we try not to miss a beat in those situations. One other thing I wanted to touch on briefly, too, is our TAC team. They do a phenomenal job with active shooter. And I just wanted to provide a couple stats on that. But we do in the community, businesses, churches, for those active shooter situations. And to date, we started this back in 2017. We've done over 60 active shooter trainings. And we've had 21 more requests just in the last month from the last incident. So that concludes that. Any questions?
Deputy Chief, I know that Chief Talia is out of town. We appreciate you stepping up to the plate and coming and providing the update today. There is no recommended action to take today, but Commissioner Richardson, questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor. Yes, Deputy Chief, I just wanted to, if you would, comment briefly on the citizen involvement in the development of the public safety campus, that there was a citizens group that was a part of that effort.
Yeah, we've definitely put out notifications of those public notifications, providing try feedback. We've had community meetings that Chief DeLeo specifically went to. We've had our cop squad speak to it in the neighborhoods. It is part of our, when we contract with a design and construction firm, that's something that we'll be looking for, to have somebody specifically to kind of keep that communication flow going with the citizens.
Commissioner, if I may, if you would indulge me, Mr. Mayor, Assistant City Manager Barber has been heavily engaged in that as well. Okay. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like her to provide some comments as well. In addition to the community engagement that our staff has done, there's been considerable activity around the Orange Avenue Apartments project. A lot of overlap as it relates to that I think helps us get to where we are. And I'd love Ms. Barber to share some words on that as well.
Ms. Barber, good to see you.
You as well. When we started the project, when the public safety campus was identified as a part of the strategic plan for the police department, and the commission authorized us to pursue a project in the south side of the community, we held a community meeting where we invited a number of community leaders from that area, from the Copa Terrace area, from Orange Avenue, as well as several prominent ministers from the South Side, just to have a conversation about what we were considering. The meeting was held, that initial meeting was held at Jagaitha Park, to kind of get some feedback from some people who we know were involved in the community about what we were thinking, how it was connected to our community policing strategy, the fact that this was not an attempt to create some occupying force, but a way to really, number one, the need for a station had been identified. Looking for a location that was big enough to create a modern policing station where you could incorporate the kind of community space that such a facility would have. So we're just trying to get feedback on what kind of space would be desired there or needed there. And then every event that we've held since then, whether we've gone to a number of Rotary meetings and working with the project on the Orange Avenue site that the city manager mentioned, there was a community engagement committee that was a part of that project. And you'll be hearing something in the near future about that project as well. But one of the things that was identified was a need for a public safety facility was a part of their overall plan. And in that plan, operating really independently from the city, they also identified basically identically the same spot that we ended up also looking at for that facility when they talked about the kinds of, they looked at transit, they looked at public safety, looked at housing. What would you need to create this complete kind of community? So they've done quite a bit of engagement on that side as well. In terms of the most intense engagement, we expect that to be a part of the overall project. The contractors that we're working with have come up with ways to talk about how do you engage the community in developing the space. So if it's youth space, you involve the children in helping to design the playground space. The community space will actually be big enough to hold a commission meeting in that building if you wanted to. So it also involves engagement of parts of the community that don't typically come down to commission meetings because of transportation issues. It happens after hours. They have to pay for a bus to get here or have to get transportation here. You would place those kind of facilities in the community. So we have continued to do that. The chief has had a number of speaking engagements, but a part of the overall strategy is an intense engagement of the community about the design of the space, kind of features you would have in the space, and actually helping to design it. We've also, I personally have had a number of conversations with business owners in the area. We've talked to our partners across the street from the Piggly Wiggly about their feedback, and as well as FAMU was involved. They have a master plan that includes some development in that surrounding area. We've had several conversations with them, and they've participated in the RFP process in parts of the project. We've also incorporated other citizens in the RFP processes to get feedback from the community and representatives of the community. And the bond community, which you're very familiar with, also in their conversations, when they look at what they think it takes to create strong, vibrant bond community, public safety is one of their number one priorities. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from them as well.
Great. Commissioner Richardson, any follow-up?
No follow-up.
Great.
Thank you, Barbara.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Very comprehensive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to the one of the earlier speakers, I wanted to answer a couple of the questions that were put out there. The police department right now is in the old Sealy Elementary building. There is no chance to be able to renovate that up to the standards it needs to be renovated. It's well beyond its lifespan, and we had budgeted every year for several years now $150,000 in annual expenditures to fight mold and water intrusion and things like that in that building. So there's no way to renovate that. Also, there were choices. There was an RFP and choices for other potential sites. I voted against this site because I wanted it on city property, but there was a process that showed us more than one site.
Excellent. Any further comment from Commissioner? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all that has been done to be inclusive, but what I'm hearing, even from speakers here tonight, it sounds like we have a little more work to do. And I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is. I know we're not trying to rush out and do it tomorrow. I understand that. But would there be any harm in, Mr. City Manager, to attempt to again bring more people into the fold to discuss? There are those who don't come to city commission meetings. There are those who don't go to Rotary Club meetings. There are those who don't go to Jake Gaither that might be interested in hearing what the plans are and what has been done. I'm very impressed with what has been done, but I think there's still more that we need to do to engage citizens beyond the sector where they've been engaged. So is there time to do that?
Yes, ma'am. I think that's an excellent point. Actually, I think it's contemplated in the process. We are working towards hiring an engineering firm to help us design the facility. So at this point, it's conceptual. At this point, we've used the term campus. We've used that term very purposefully because it will be beyond a police headquarters. It'll include community space and engagement space, recreation space, as Ms. Barber indicated. Those conversations are necessary as we get into the design. We think that takes about a year. It's a lengthy process. And so as we move through that, we kind of do our requirements gathering and our development of design and get to the details. There's good opportunity. I think there's time. I think I think that would be very productive to go and speak to the entire community at different forums and different events and talk about the vision and what will be included in the campus. I think that fits perfectly within the model that we have in front of us today.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, any follow-up? Good?
I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Great. Commissioner Matlow?
Ms. Barber, could you tell us a little bit about the attendance of the community events that have already taken place?
The various community events.
Or the attendance of the engagement events on the specific project?
Yeah, the initial meeting that we had was a more intimate meeting. That we had about 30 people who participated in that meeting. We have at all of our, at the one at Bond, I think we had about 75 or 80 people who attended that meeting. We have, I don't know about the one for the Housing Authority and the size of their meetings. And part of the issue is that, like the city manager said, all of that is contemplated as a part. We don't have the land yet. So to engage on how to build on land that we don't have yet, we're trying to get to a point where and then there'll be a much more intense engagement, including a citizen advisory committee that the staff will work with that will be inclusive of citizens, of the religious community in that area, business owners in that area. So it'll be a much more inclusive. But altogether, between all the events that I've done, that the chief's done, the meetings that we've had, I would just say a few hundred.
Okay. Just from my perspective, it seems that we know what the law enforcement intent for the campus is, but we don't really know what the community intent is. So I think when we lead with that, and we've had conversations about basketball courts and those sorts of things, I think the community would feel a lot better if they were on the front end of the planning. So we're not, if it's going to be a safety campus, we're not just building a police station. We are building community rooms where people can do job training or make sure that there's still a grocery store, retail space, those sorts of things. And I understand that we're getting to that, but before we roll out such a big project, we should deeply engage with the community on the front end. And so they know what's coming, and then they're not, in shock and feel like something's happening that maybe is a good project, but they just don't know what's coming.
Yes, and we will make every effort to figure out how to communicate more broadly. We came out of the box presenting this as a community facility and a community resource, but we realize that we haven't engaged everyone. We'll figure out a way to do that, to be more intentional about engaging various parts of the community, because that's a part of the vision that we presented in 2016, that this is not just a police station, because we could build that anywhere, but because of the broader benefit that it can serve a community, we were trying to find a place where we could best leverage that. So we'll make sure to do that, to be more intentional about making sure that message gets out.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, of course, you all are new to this, and I know that you've been involved from a community perspective, but I can tell you there has been a tremendous amount of citizen input into this project. I mean, it didn't just start yesterday, and it was very intentional from the very beginning that we would have community input. I live less than 2 miles from where this is proposed. I can tell you that my family and I have been the victims of crime on 4 different occasions at our home, and our cars burglarized sitting in our driveway. My neighbors to the south in the Jake Gaither community, at a community forum held just last night, one of the things that they talked about was the increasing crime in the Jake Gaither community, the Bond community. The reason we put cameras in the Bond community was because of crime and open drug sales and prostitution. And when we put those cameras there at the behest of the community, the neighborhood, we got ahead of them a little bit, but when we slowed down and took it to the neighborhood, they agreed with it because they knew something had to be done to reduce crime in the Bond community. When we did that and some other things, we saw a 30% reduction in crime in the Bond community. That's part of what this campus will do for the south side of Tallahassee. I certainly, and we've heard from Assistant Commissioner Barber that this communication will be an ongoing process. It's not the end of it. We will continue to involve the community in the design, in determining what needs to be on the campus to serve the community. But I can tell you a lot has gone into this. And the community, I believe, is I mean, you can't reach 100% of the people. We're trying. You can't reach 100% of the people, and you can't delay decisions trying to reach 100%. This is something that is desperately needed by our department and our community, and I certainly am one who supports it and would like to see us move forward, but continue that community engagement as we move forward.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments from the commission, Deputy Chief, thank you again for the update. This item does not require any action, so we're going to move forward with 13.02. Colleagues, let me remind you, it's 5 minutes to 5. We have scheduled some type of a dinner break and then come back at 6 o'clock for the public hearing, and that is a hard start. I would prefer to keep moving forward and finishing up, unless anybody has any. Great. So we're on 13.02, the acceptance of the Urban Forest Master Plan. Mr. Manager, will you please introduce the item?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll be quick, and we've got a really exciting plan. It's available online. I know you have a copy of it. Mindy Moorman, our urban forester, is going to run through very briefly the highlights of it. But you know we've been working for over a year to develop a master plan for our trees. They're so important to our community. They make up a large part of the character of our community, and I think master planning is appropriate. We have a professional on staff. We're so glad to have her. She's worked with the community. We have a good plan moving forward. I think we'll be better for it, and I'd like to ask Mindy to give us the highlights of that.
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir.
I told Mindy when she did my briefing that Hurricane Michael probably knocked down a lot of the trees that we had before when her report was being put together. So.
That's right. Mindy, please.
Thank you. The hurricane was one of the major motivations behind developing an urban forest master plan. Our tree canopy is one of our most treasured assets. So the importance of having proactive urban forest management ensures the safety and resilience of our community trees. Properly managed, a healthy urban forest is important to identified commission priorities. Thoughtfully planted trees can contribute to quality infrastructure and public safety, economic development, and quality of life. Without good planning and management, trees can do the opposite, conflicting with infrastructure and utilities and increasing maintenance costs. So the Urban Forest Master Plan is a roadmap for proactive tree management unique to Tallahassee's needs. Just a quick overview of the development process. We started in October of 2017 by performing an urban tree canopy analysis and a sample inventory of public trees to provide information about the current state of our urban forest. Community outreach determined citizens' priorities in regards to our community trees, and we performed an internal review of city programs, policies, and management processes. So having completed this extensive year-long planning process, we now have a better understanding of our urban forest distribution, composition, challenges, and opportunities. An urban forest is an immense and long-lived resource, so this measurable change will take time. This is a 20-year plan that provides recommendations that we can implement incrementally over those 20 years, providing for flexibility in changing priorities and funding needs. So before I get too far into it, what do I mean when I'm talking about an urban forest? That's all the trees within city limits, so public and private trees. Our urban tree canopy analysis told us that our total tree canopy coverage is 55%, which means that 55% of the city is shaded by trees. That is a very dense tree canopy. It's actually the highest recorded tree canopy in the nation. So we're best in the nation at many things, apparently. So that's quantity. We have a lot, but quality, that's what types of trees, what ages are they, what conditions are they in. So looking at species, we have the highest tree diversity in the nation. So our diversity is relatively good compared to industry recommendations, which is that no one species should make up more than 10% of the total population. So while overall diversity is good, I want to focus on the top 5 most common tree species. Only one of those is considered a long-lived, high-value urban tree species, and that's the live oak at 7%. The other 4 species make up a combined 38% of our urban forest, and these are short-lived, weak-wooded species, one of which, the camphor tree, is an invasive species and actively damaging to our environment.
Moving on to age diversity, we see the results of an urban forest with a high proportion of short-lived species prone to storm damage. So our young tree population is high at 67% compared to recommended standards. This is good. It puts us on a trajectory to correct the rest of those numbers, which are low. This points to strong planting programs, but also lots of regeneration of species that grow from seed easily. So many of our most common tree types simply don't live that long. They don't reach mature size. Once they do, they're typically in decline due to structural issues and decay. So this says to us that preservation of high-value tree types is important while we continue to support strong planting programs that emphasize preferred tree types. Looking at condition, 78% of our public trees were rated in fair condition. This is a little bit higher than you'd see in other cities. It's partly due to constricted root space because these trees are close to sidewalks and streets. So this is common for public trees, but like I said, it's a little bit high. This is also indicative of a high proportion of short-lived tree species prone to decay and structural issues. Looking at wind resistance. Remember that I said 38% of our urban forest is short-lived, low-value urban species. So it follows, if you look at this yellow bar, the longest bar, 37% of our tree canopy is species that are rated as having low wind resistance. So again, this points toward the need for a higher population of more high-value, storm-resilient species. And a quick overview of our public input and internal review. Overall, tree canopy is very highly valued by citizens and stakeholders. It's a defining characteristic of our city and a major contributor to our sense of place. We also completed an internal review of all the management efforts, programs, policies, including land development code that the city uses to manage its trees. So that includes landscape requirements, tree preservation and removal requirements, and internal tree management and planting efforts. So with an understanding of the current state of our urban forest and how that relates to our ability to sustain a dense, healthy, and diverse tree canopy, we have developed the following goals. Number one, improve canopy quality. The data that I just shared about species and age diversity, tree condition, and species suitability point to a lower quality canopy and lack of sustainability of our tree canopy and the benefits that it provides. Proactive maintenance, strategic tree planting, and preservation of the right kinds of trees is critical to improving canopy quality and ensuring long-term sustainability. We can and should do this in multiple ways to address both public and private tree populations. Completing a public tree inventory should be a priority. That project has started and it is ongoing. And land development code and city planting programs should emphasize the planting and preservation of a diverse mix of the right kinds of trees and proper placement of trees, so the right tree in the right place. Goal 2, maintain canopy levels. Although we recognize the need to change the composition of our urban forest, we intend to maintain canopy density in the long term with the understanding that levels may fluctuate in the short term as we work to balance the needs of our growing community and to increase populations of high-value tree species. Improvements to the quality of our canopy is necessary in order to continue to enjoy the extensive tree canopy well into the future, because even with high populations of less desirable species, it's important to recognize that our dense tree canopy is still a major asset to the city. So while we put a focus on recomposition, we should continue to prioritize maintaining that high level of canopy density. Good tree management does include removal of poor quality trees, trees in poor condition or in unsuitable locations, but we should continue to emphasize strong planting efforts to achieve this goal. And the last goal, engage the larger community. Over 70% of our tree canopy, that's over 2/3 of our tree canopy, is on private property. So the city cannot achieve these goals alone. The city, citizens, community groups, and stakeholders need to work together on these common goals. A need for improved communication and especially public education was cited multiple times through the engagement process. So during the development of the plan, we created a centralized hub for urban forestry information at talgov.com/tallytrees. We'll continue to use this website and update it as we implement the plan. And we also heard from citizens that social media was an effective way to disperse information. They use that a lot. So we'll work harder to ensure that we're using social media to a greater degree. We should be ensuring that citizens have access to good information about the type of tree management that they can do at their own homes and businesses that supports these master plan goals. Our Adopt a Tree program, for example, already offers long-lived, storm-resilient species and is free to citizens, and this program does have the capacity to grow. We need to measure our progress along the way. This plan contains both short and long-term goals and recommendations that, like I said, we can implement incrementally over the next 20 years. This allows for flexibility that we can review and adjust our approach along the way. In order to do that, we need to know how we're measuring ourselves. So setting benchmarks to help measure that progress is an important step. For example, to improve canopy quality, we might decide that no one species should make up more than 10% of our urban forest. Or we might decide that our top 5 species should be long-lived, storm-resilient species. So over time, we go back to that pie chart and we try and make sure that's changing for the good. To maintain canopy levels, we should be updating an urban tree canopy analysis every 10 years, and we can track that number and make sure it's staying consistent. As far as engaging the larger community, we can track number of neighborhoods or landholders engaged. And in general, an accomplishment of a checklist of items such as code revisions, urban tree canopy analysis updated, inventory completed will help us measure our progress. The Urban Forest Master Plan further supports Commission priorities of economic development by recognizing that trees add value to the places where people live, work, and play. Public safety by slowing traffic, reducing crime, there is true data on that, and creating a network of comfortable, safe, walkable spaces, and quality of life by providing numerous ecological, social, and health benefits, and also improved public infrastructure. When well planted, trees are the only type of city infrastructure that increases in value over time. Accepting this plan prioritizes proactive and long-range urban forest management and thoughtful planning that allows us to have all the things a growing community needs while living with our trees. And I can take any questions. I'm full of information.
Excellent. Mindy, Commissioners, before we get into questions, I do want to ask, is there anybody from the public that is here that would like to speak on this agenda item that has not had an opportunity to speak? Seeing none. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to commend Mindy for this report. This is probably one of the better quality, most comprehensive reports that I've seen, and it addresses an issue that is so important to all of us, and that is our urban forest canopy. We've heard that from citizens from throughout the community. We know, as you've talked about this afternoon, the benefits of it. But not only does this analyze our current situation, but gives us a long-term plan for protecting that canopy and benchmarks for gauging how we're making progress towards that. What I was very pleased with was the amount of community involvement. And again, Commissioners, this isn't something we just started. Commissioner Maddox can probably speak to 5 years ago and previous to that. But I can speak to the last 4 years. Community involvement in projects like this has been an emphasis of the city of Tallahassee, and especially this commission. We try to include as much of the community as possible before we make major decisions like this impacting our community. And I just want to, again, commend you, Mindy, for the work that you've done. This is absolutely phenomenal, and I look forward in whatever time I have left here on the commission in seeing that this is implemented to its fullest extent. And I'd like to move acceptance of the report, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Sounds great. The motion is to accept the report and move forward.
Discussion.
Made by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by everybody else on the commission, before Commissioner Matlow. Commissioner Matlow and the Commissioner Williams-Cox for comment.
Well, we were actually asking for discussion after the second. So go.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say this plan was great. You brought a big stack of a lot to read and really getting into it. You really did your research and identifying, I think, the problems that the community have with where our trees are going and those sorts of things, and really laid out how we can maintain the level and how we can work together. And I thought it was especially insightful that after the Great Fire, our community came forward and said the first thing we want to do is rebuild our urban forest. So we have a 175-year history of caring about these trees, and I just thought that was great. And then to go into the financial benefits that we actually get $15 million in gain from these trees is something, I think many people don't even think about. So I think it's a good motion. I'd like to, if I may, I think this plan really puts us in the direction of something like what the city of Atlanta has done. And we're talking about community engagement, and what they've actually established is a tree commission to oversee a type of plan like this. And it brings together everybody who would have a dog in the fight. So it's not just environmentalists and botanists, it's residential builders and commercial builders. So I'd like, if we could, to amend the motion to include, to have language come back of how we can develop a tree commission to oversee this plan.
Yeah. Mindy, did you tell me that there was, thank you, Mr. Mayor, that there were contractors involved on the, and maybe we could use the existing committee as our monitoring committee as we go forward, because it sounded like it was comprehensive. If not, Commissioner, maybe there's some folk we could just add to that existing committee if it's not as comprehensive as you'd like.
We did set up a stakeholder group that was made up of representatives of organizations like the Tallahassee Builders Association and many, many others. So we have that set up, and they were very motivated to continue working on it. And we can certainly add people as we find other groups that want to be involved. We actually just recently added the local chapter of the Audubon Society. So that's a group that can grow and that is already motivated to continue to work. So,
And, just to clarify, when I'm saying commission, what Atlanta does is actually, you mentioned in the plan creating a tree-specific ordinance. So this commission would be able to have those stakeholders make those decisions when there's an appeal or those sorts of things. I know none of us are experts on trees, and it'll give the community the opportunity to guide that process and oversee that plan.
Okay.
So we have the motion on the table, and Commissioner Williams-Cox, I'm going to come to you in just a second. Commissioner Matlow, I've got an idea. I see where you're going, and I like where you're doing. We currently have the Canopy Road Citizen Action Committee, okay? Maybe it is time that we sit down and we look at the jurisdiction and the specific mission and scope of the Citizen Action Committee in regards to the Canopy Roads, okay? Is it time to expand it? Is it time to actually look more at what Atlanta's doing in other communities? I love your direction. What I would suggest for consideration, I'd love to hear what everyone has to say, is what if we go ahead and implement the Urban Forest Master Plan as is and have an agenda item come back to us and allow staff to analyze whether or not what we have is a great basis to be able to expand to accomplish your goal, or do we need to have a conversation about creating a tree commission? But I think that we've got a framework in place right now, Commissioner Matlow, that might accomplish what we collectively, and I agree with the direction that you're going, that we can go ahead and build upon, that already has the appointment process in place to that commission instead of starting from scratch. So that's just one suggestion to your suggestion. Now, you did ask for a friendly amendment, and if rejected, then what you would need to do is we'll make a substitute motion and see if it gets a second and go from there. So something to think about. Commissioner Williams-Cox, thoughts?
Yes, Jeremy copied off my paper. Let me just report it. Because what I had written here was, having served on the Planning Commission, I know that along the process, there are stops. And going through what we just went through with the removal of some trees, very historic trees, I think that it's time that we make the fact that there's maybe a tree to be considered before development, that we take a hard look at that using citizens as well as experts like yourself, Mindy. And so what I had written here was Planning Commission type, stop, question mark, as well as having a citizens advisory group. I think I like what you're saying, Mayor, about the Canopy Roads. We can call them tree commission. Whatever we call them, the function should be that no other tree would be, there'll be some criteria established for the removal of trees and not just arbitrarily. Even though I know that many of the trees are on private property, but, we have ways of working with private owners to try to preserve what we need to preserve. And being the inheritor of a patriarch oak in my yard, I understand what people mean about their trees. So we need to do whatever we can to make sure that we remain friendly, tree friendly, but safe.
Excellent. Commissioner Matlow, I'm going to come back to you. What are your thoughts? Where do you want to go with this now?
So, yeah, I mean, if we want to vote on that separately, and then I'll make a separate motion.
Okay, sounds great. Any further comment? Motion's been probably made to accept the Urban Forest Master Plan. Excellent job. And by the way, excellent job with the individual briefings as well. We certainly do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Without further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 4-0 with the Mayor Pro Tem out of chambers. Okay, Commissioner Matlow, come back to you.
So I'd like to move that we direct staff to come back with language that could either create a tree commission similar to Atlanta or look at various other commissions and groups that could take on that role.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Manager, do you understand the intent of Commissioner Matlow's motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do.
Excellent. And we can bring back an analysis to help further that goal down the road?
Yes, sir, we will.
Excellent. Motion's been made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 4-0 with the Mayor Pro Tem out of chambers. Great suggestion, Commissioner Matlow. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Moving on, we are now on to item 13.03. I'm going to ask the City Auditor, Mr. Malashevsky. Did I get it?
Pretty close.
Help me out. Or as the rest of the city calls you, Auditor Joe.
Auditor Joe, yes.
No,
Malashevsky.
welcome. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, this is a policy update to the city's audit policy. It is technical in nature. The audit standards from time to time change, and we need to point to those changes in our audit policy when that occurs. In this case, the professional standards have incorporated as mandatory guidance 10 core principles for internal auditors to abide by, to be in conformance with the professional standards. We're referencing those in the new language of the policy, and we ask for your consideration to approve that language.
Excellent. Once again, is there anyone from the public that is here that would like to comment on 13.03? Seeing none.
Move approval.
It's been moved properly.
Second.
Been moved properly by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Certainly appreciate it. Item 13.04, Mr. Manager, for introduction.
Thank you, sir. As Robert Wiggin comes forward, Robert is our Director of Budget and Other Matters. He's going to walk through our budget closeout this time of the year. We close out our budget of our fiscal year that runs October through September. We have 14 operating funds that we close that includes our utility operations, other enterprise funds, as well as our general fund. So we want to highlight what we found during last year. Overall, it was a good budget. I think the theme, though, is that revenues remain constrained, and we have to be very diligent to manage expenses. So I'd like Robert to give us an overview of how we ended the year and seek your authorization to close out fiscal year 2018.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Commissioners, appointed officials, thank you for your time this morning or this afternoon. Our goals for today are to review fiscal year 18 priorities and progress that from this past fiscal year. We also want to review the fiscal results, as City Manager Goad mentioned, for the fiscal year budget plan to close it out at this time, and then request your approval of these final closeout actions. As you well know, the fiscal year 18 budget was developed through 10 public meetings and workshops, strategic planning sessions. The City Commission retreat established priorities on how we would move forward with the budget process and operational requirements within the departments. And fiscal year 18 was a hold-the-line budget where it was important to consider efficiency and effectiveness of city services consistent with our organizational values. Some of the City Commission priorities, your leadership on public safety is paying off. Crime is at a 5-year low, as was reported earlier. Investment in infrastructure was another priority. We invested $6.5 million in maintenance and repair of roads and sidewalks. That enabled us to do 6 times the amount of work on those roads and on those sidewalks than we had done almost since 2015. So that was a great effort in 2018. And a total of 21,000 sidewalk trip hazards were removed in that same fiscal year period of time. And then, as you well know, economic development efforts contributed to strong economic growth, and that benefited a few of our funds, and we saw it in the results. Some of the budget assumptions as we went through the fiscal year, we always reference the municipal cost comparison. It's as the seventh largest city in Florida out of 415 cities. It gives us some perspective on where we are from a cost basis for residential and commercial community members. We are the next to lowest cost for rates, fees, and taxes, and that always guides our direction as we move forward in developing the budget and then implementing the budget. Some other assumptions that we follow is, we evaluate the financial stability of the organization. We're very protective of our bond ratings. Our policies include those standards that they expect to see, and so that's a consideration as we develop reserve levels, debt service amounts for borrowing for new infrastructure, and then our expenditure levels in each of the various funds. And then I mentioned city infrastructure investment, the $6.5 million being a priority to maintain that infrastructure that we build. And then one other aspect is transparency. It's come up a number of times. We've made a great effort to ensure that you're updated on a regular basis with where we are in the current budget, where we think we're going in developing the next budget. We want to also not only involve your guidance and leadership, but then the public's involvement. We have OpenGov as an online tool to visualize the budget and then to get near real-time updates on where we are monthly for purchasing, for actual budget expenditures, and then actual capital needs. And the online budget also assists us in that regard, and that it's a GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association approved document that's available for the public's use. Just as a closeout summary overview, this is a snapshot of our 14 operating funds by which we provide accountability either by federal or state law, by city ordinance, or by city policy for state and local taxes, rates that we charge on a consumption basis, fees for specifically requested services, and then those revenue sources that support the respective funds. Those respective funds are generally within three areas. We've got the general fund, which is where our police department, our public infrastructure, our parks and recreation, our human services are funded out of. We've got enterprise funds, electric, gas, water, sewer, stormwater, solid waste, and then our special revenue funds, fire, building inspection, cemetery, and golf. What we're recommending tonight, that the operating and capital budgets for these fiscal year 18 funds that are listed in this chart are shown with the amended budget, the actual expenditures, and then actual revenues, and then a variance. We're making recommendations based on city policy on how to deal with those variances, and I'd like to focus on a few of those in specific. The general fund, as the fund that accounts for resources, as I mentioned, for ad valorem tax revenue, for transfers from utilities, from state revenue sharing, half-cent sales tax. The general fund ensures that we're funding police, parks and recreation, public infrastructure, and human services to the fullest extent. The general fund expenditures were $3 million less than budgeted, which is a credit to those general fund departments working together. The change in that budget was primarily in contracts and supplies and other operating expense. That then allowed us to react to softer than expected revenues. The closeout also accounts for a land sale that we made this last year, the Monroe Street drive-through facility, and then the decision to close operating projects and to close purchase orders that were essentially ways to carry forward some additional inventory and or some get a jump on some work. And so the general fund is recommended in a balanced budget state. Some other significant operating funds. The building fund, as discussed in the summary table, this is one of our special revenue funds. With a high volume of permits, there was a $900,000 surplus in the building inspection fund. We recognize the workload that these new permits required and increased staffing, and may make that same decision as we go forward in this coming fiscal year. That $900,000 surplus will be used within the building inspection fund to ensure that we're carrying out the work that those permits and that development requires of our building inspection fund. The fire services fund is in the third year of a 5-year budget cycle. In the initial years, it was planned that those first 2 years would realize a surplus in our fire services fee implementation. This being the third would see us at a break even, which we're seeing at about a $292,000 surplus. So we are near break even. And then the latter 2 years would rely on that surplus from the prior 2 years. What we've come to find out is that expenses are increasing and revenues were not as optimistic or in place as we thought. And so it's going to be a continuous effort to monitor the fund and ensure we come in balanced in these next 2 years. The utility fund surpluses that I noted in the summary table give us the ability to shore up our reserves, to apply these surpluses towards renewal, replacement, and improvement funds, which allows us to delay any debt service for capital projects. And so that's the recommendation. And then the cemetery fund is balanced utilizing a planned transfer from the perpetual care trust fund. The good news is that was 50% less than estimated in the original budget. One other area that I want to mention is the solid waste fund. It's a growing cost business. We balance the fund based on the rate study using reserves, much less than what we originally estimated because of cost savings that were able to be put in place. But we do see increasing disposal cost. We see revenue that's declining for recycling efforts, even though that's a commitment that we're making to the community, and we'll continue that effort. That is something that we'll pay attention to as we move through this next fiscal year. But the solid waste budget is balanced with the use of those reserves. Aviation, with the good economy that I mentioned, new routes at the airport, then employments are up, and therefore there's a surplus. That surplus is guided and predicted by the airline use and lease agreements, and as a result, some of that goes back to the airlines themselves, and then other amounts of it go back into renewal, replacement, and improvement fund for improvements at the airport. The golf course is balanced with the transfer from the golf course RR&I fund. I think everybody experienced the weather we had this last weekend. Well, we had 3 or 4 events like that last year, and that impacts the rounds of golf. They've done a great effort to ensure that the greens are in tip-top shape, but rain days just delay rounds, and so we're using their reserve fund to balance the budget in that case. Again, I'll state that the operating and capital funds for fiscal year 18 have been closed in accordance with our policies. Some of the next steps that we'll ask you to take are to accept the closeout report as presented, and then authorize all the year-end and current year budget adjustments as detailed in the agenda item, which includes approving fiscal year 18 year-end transfers between funds and to the RR&I reserves as detailed in the agenda item. We also have the opportunity to accelerate the use of some concurrency funds to install bus shelters, and so we're taking that opportunity to ask for that approval at this time also. We feel like fiscal year 18 was a solid year with balanced budgets, moving priorities forward, and the closeout is the final step in this process. As you well know, based on the agenda dates that we've set, we've got 9 scheduled meetings coming up. This kicks off a closeout of our fiscal year 18 budget process. We'll be bringing back a quarterly update for the first quarter of fiscal year 19 in mid-January, and then from there we'll start talking about fiscal year 20 assumptions consistent with the schedule that you see.
Move staff recommendations.
Excellent. First, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this item? 1304, seeing none. Motion's been made by the Mayor Pro Tem for staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any other comments? Seeing none.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to bring
Richardson.
one thing to you all's attention that I have, that's been an issue for me since I came to the commission. In terms of the fire services fee, one of the observations that I made because we approved this when I came to the commission, is there was a proposal for a fire station in the Lake Bradford Road area. There was a higher call for services in terms of number of calls for that area, but a longer response time. And so as we move forward for 2 years from now, when we are reviewing that fire services fee, that we keep that as a priority. Because one of the things I know about that area is that there are a lot of wood frame homes in that area, mobile homes. And so when they catch fire, it doesn't take very long for them to become ashes. And so I want us to keep that in mind as we move forward and address the need for a fire station in that area.
Point taken. Seeing no further comment, the motion's been made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. All those in favor of staff recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Mr. Manager, 13.05.
Thank you, sir. This agenda item requests your approval to enter into an agreement with the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium to receive $147,000 in grant funds to acquire and construct 2 affordable homes. The recommendation is the result of a competitive application process which selected the Lenders Consortium to receive funding as a Community Housing Development Organization, or CHODO. They will often hear that term. Michael Parker, our Director of Community Housing and Human Services, is here to answer any questions on this item that you may have.
Excellent. Anyone here from the general public that would like to speak on 13.05? Seeing none, is there any?
Mr. Mayor, just in an abundance
I'll come back to you, Mr.
Yeah, in an abundance of caution, I want to acknowledge that I am on the board of the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium representing the city of Tallahassee.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Move approval.
Motion's been made by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of staff recommendation signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Manager, do we have any other business before us under policy formation and direction?
No, sir.
Excellent. We stand in recess until 6 o'clock. We will come back for the public hearing at 6 o'clock. Thank you. It is 6:05. I'd like to call in the public hearing. Mr. Manager, we are in 15.01. Will you please introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move forward with item number 15.01, which is the second and final public hearing to consider the extension of the FAMU Campus Development Agreement until June 30th, 2019.
Ms. Jackson, first of all, I apologize.
No
I did not realize that you would be introducing the items. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this item?
No speakers on 1501.
Commissioners?
Move option 1.
It's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Ms. Jackson, we are on 1502.
Item number 15.02 is the second and final public hearing to consider the extension of the FSU Campus Development Agreement to December 31st, 2020.
No
Move
speakers
option
on
1.
1502.
There are no public speakers on this item. It's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any further commission discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Madam Attorney, item 1503.
Item number 15.03 is ordinance number 18-0-25, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Chapter 10 zoning of the Tallahassee Land Development Code, eliminating automated car washes as a principal permitted use in the Central Urban CU 45 zoning district, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. This is the first of 2 public hearings. The second and final public hearing is scheduled for January 30th, 2019 at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City of Tallahassee City Commission chambers at City Hall.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any speakers?
No speakers on this item.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
No motion. We have a second public hearing coming up.
Oh, it's first public hearing. I apologize.
No problem.
Excellent. 1504.
Item number 15.04 is resolution number 18-R-54, is the first and only public hearing on a resolution abandoning the 644-square-foot portion of the right-of-way located south of 1016 Seaboard Street in the city of Tallahassee, Leon County, Florida.
Do we have any public hearing?
There are no speakers on the item.
No speakers. Second. Moved by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. No further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Ms. Jackson, item 1505.
Item number 15.05 is ordinance number 18-Z-32, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory as an in general commercial C2 zoning district on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflicts and severability and providing an effective date. This is the first and only public hearing.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
We do have one speaker on the item, Sean Marston.
Mr. Marston, your name and address for the record, please. If you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Okay. Sean Marston, 2851 Remington Green Circle. I'm the president of Urban Catalyst Consultants, representing the applicant for this zoning change where we want to change 5 parcels from UP1 to C2. The reason for that is it would allow us more flexibility in redeveloping those parcels, as well as correct a non-conforming use. Planning Commission voted approval. I'd appreciate a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public speakers?
No further speakers.
Any comments from the commission?
Move staff recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Staff recommendation has been properly moved by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. We are on item number 1601. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any public speakers on unagendaed business?
Yes, sir. We do have a few speakers on this item, this portion of the meeting. Reverend Stanley Sims is our first speaker. As with the other portions of our meeting, speakers have 3 minutes each for their remarks. If you'd give your name and address, we would appreciate that. He will be followed by Jules Bailey.
Pastor Sims, welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. And I want to say, Commissioner Matlow, I was just really touched by you thanking citizens, and Mayor, you look like you're just having the time of your life, and to bring this type of decorum to this room is just very welcoming.
Thank you.
I think I've been thanked for my comments since Mayor Marks. The reason I wanted to come before you today is about public access to this building. Commissioner Matlow was very nice to come down to my office on the first floor for me to discuss this issue. And there's an issue of concern because I don't understand the level of strong security in this building when this building has the least amount of high-profile elected officials compared to the courthouse and the Capitol. Even other vendors have challenges with this security system because if you come here and you got a question that you got to go to the budget department, then you come, you sign in, the budget department employee got to come down to get you, you go up, they look at your paperwork, and then they tell you you need to go over to the attorney's office and get it signed. You just can't walk over to the attorney's office. You got to go back down to the security officer. They got to call up to the attorney, and then the attorney got to come down to the place to get you. Then you go back up there and you get that signed, and then God forbid if you don't have somewhere else in City Hall to go because you got to go back down to the security office. But when you get ready to go to the Capitol, you don't take your watch off. You just take your phone, you lay it down, you put it through the conveyor belt, and you're on your way. You go to the courthouse, lay it down, warn you, you're on your way. I like that kind of government. Here's my concern. My other point, because my time is going. When we talk about public access and a lot of the issues that concern Mayor Pro Tem Scott, if you'll go back down with me to history lane, this feeds through a lot of some of our concerns. when we were going to build the Renaissance building, what did they come to, not this beautiful podium, and say, you're going to have businesses in there. We're going to have restaurants in there. We're going to vitalize the Frenchtown community. Name a white business in the Renaissance building other than government. I'm sorry, I should have said that. But name a restaurant. And so we've been told these things about how all of this great stuff is going to be, but when it's fruition time, and so that like, can I wrap? Yeah.
Please go ahead.
That wrapping that up, and so it all tears into public access, where we bring our people that don't always 400% agree with us, but we bring them to the table so that we can find common ground. Thank you.
Pastor Sims, thank you very much. Public access is something that is very important to all five of us, and I'm sure it is something that we will be focusing on over the break and into the future.
Thank you.
Next speaker?
Yeah, next speaker, Mayor, is Jules Bailey, and then Jordan Scott. And those are the only two remaining speakers I have.
Ms. Bailey, how are you?
Hello, if I can reach this.
Your name and address for the record, please.
All right, hi, my name is Jules Bailey. It was at the address that I wrote on the speakers. Okay, my street address? Okay, just making sure. That's 557 Beverly Court, Tallahassee, Florida, 32301. All right, so I'm here today to talk about the proposed moving of the Tallahassee Police Department headquarters to the lot across from the Piggly Wiggly on the intersection of Orange Avenue and Monroe. This is something that is going to cost between $50 and $60 million. At a community conversation about a month and a half ago, I heard Commissioner Richardson cite a $60 million figure. Most recently in the Tallahassee Democrat, the number had gone from $50 million to $53 million. I've been to some community conversations recently, and what I've heard people say they want in the South Side at these community conversations is that they want vocational training in schools, they want their roads repaired, they want their sidewalks repaired, they want to add speed bumps and stop signs so people stop speeding through the neighborhoods where people live and children play. They want job programs, both for adults and for at-risk children. What they don't want is they do not want the Save-A-Lot, a grocery store where the what is being called a public safety campus, the new police department headquarters will be built. They don't want a grocery store moved in a food desert. There has been some plans to possibly move those businesses. There is nothing concrete as of yet. And it is a commuter-heavy area, and that is close to FAMU. There's FAMU students that would find it difficult to get to a grocery store if it was moved. They do not want that either. We've also heard that property values will go up if the police station is moved to the south side. If property values go up, people's rent will go up. This is the most rent-heavy area of Tallahassee. I have not heard anyone say how they would help the people that are living there who are renting and what's going to happen with the resulting housing crisis. So there's also claim that development will ultimately good for people, will drive the economy up, will drive wages up. What development does is it ultimately drives money to the top. The contractors are the ones that are making the most, they're going to make the most money, are going to benefit the most out of this. Instead, I would like to argue to invest money directly into the community rather than relying on whatever the contractors want to provide people. Once the contractors are gone, those jobs are temporary. They're going to take that with them. So what I would like to ask is to listen to the community, listen to what people have been saying. They want development invested directly in the community. They do not want a grocery store moved in what is already a food desert. And what I've not heard anyone say is that they want a new police station in the South Side. And just to finish off, I'm with a group called Tallahassee Community Action Committee. We can be found on Facebook if anyone is interested in this. Thank you.
Ms. Bailey, thank you very much. Certainly do appreciate it. We did have a bit of a discussion about the public safety complex earlier today. I know that this is an issue that's very important to all of us, and the conversation will be continuing. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jordan Scott,
Mr. Scott, good to see you. Good evening. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Jordan Scott. My address is 2291 Hartsfield Way. It's in 32303. I just want to say that I'm glad to be up here. I'm a product of Leon County Public Schools. I grew up in Tallahassee, so it's great to be here fighting for a good cause. I'm here, like my friend Jules, to speak about the proposed new Tallahassee Police Department headquarters on the south side. One of the claims that is made is that it will reduce crime. I've consulted with doctors of sociology that I personally have studied with on this topic, and there is no evidence to indicate that increased policing and surveillance reduces crime. And there's a history here. Since the 1980s, investment in public and community resources, health and education have been cut and siphoned into policing. This is no mistake. This is an intentional targeting of people of color, and the new police headquarters falls in this vein and is inspired implicitly by white supremacist ideology. If the question is crime, these resources need to be spent in things that are proven to reduce crime. That's free and accessible childcare, job programs, public health, and education. I don't think that there's really any benefit to moving this headquarters to the south side, and there's certainly no benefit in spending $60 million for a police headquarters that has 4 basketball courts, et cetera, and so on and so forth. So I do hope that you will consider rethinking this plan. I know it's a new city commission, so I hope that you reconsider this.
Mr. Scott, thank you. You bring up some very interesting points that I know we'll take into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes, sir.
While I did not vote for the police station in its current location as being proposed, I take exception to the fact that any of my colleagues would have voted for something as white supremacist, including Mayor Gillum, Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Miller, or Commissioner Ziffer. So that's offensive.
No. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I too take, Scott, very much offense to that. I voted for that. I live on the south side of town. On the south side of Tallahassee, where I've lived probably as long as you are old, and I resent that. It was very much out of place, and I resent it highly. I'm looking at what's in the best interest not only of this entire community, but what is in the best interest of the community that I have lived in and invested in for 25 years now. And to say that this was based on some white supremacist ideology, I resent that.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if I may say something.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I think we have to just be open and receptive and respectable. And I think that this is a new commission, but we also have to be tolerant and understand that people are entitled to believe or say whatever they choose to believe or say based on their own value system. Likewise, we also can say what we do not like. So I hope that this dialogue will end up in a positive place. I'm hoping that, I don't know Mr. Scott, but I'm hoping that he was just citing something that he found in his research and not something that he himself believes. So I want us to, hopefully we can just bring it down a 10 or 2 and let's stay focused on the issues.
Very well stated. Thank you very much. Mr. Treasurer Clerk, do we have any other public comments?
We do not.
Commissioner Matlow, can you think of any reason why we should bring Max Hurley up to get any words of wisdom or any? Is there anything that we can think of?
If he can put 5 on it, maybe.
Or should we just leave him off?
I cannot.
Okay, we'll just keep moving on. All right, Commissioners, we are under item number 17. This is the point in the meeting, at the end of the meeting, where we have the sharing of ideas. And I look forward to hearing what each and every one of you have to say. Everybody has as much time as you could possibly imagine. If there's items you want to bring forward for consideration in the future, now's the time to do it. So, Mr. President, I'm just going, tonight, I'll just start this way. Commissioner Richardson, next minute, we'll just keep going back and forth. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any items for this evening?
Welcome to the new commissioners, and I just welcome and I'm excited about you being here. Also, just wanted to say a word for President Bush and his family, first President Bush. I watched today the funeral on television, and it was great to see our country coming together, Democrats and Republicans, people from both sides of the aisle. The footage of Senator Dole being helped to his feet so he could salute President Bush. Senator Dole, who's 94, I believe, and who was injured in World War II in the infantry, saluting President H.W. Bush, who was the youngest fighter pilot or Avenger pilot off a carrier in the United States Army Air Corps, and was shot down off the area of Japan. That is clearly the greatest generation, and it was a good day to be an American to see that. So, and with that, happy holidays. This will be our last meeting before the holidays, so happy holidays, and for everyone that are celebrating Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and everything else. Hope you enjoy your holidays.
Sounds great. Commissioner Matlow.
How many hours do I get?
As long as you want, sir.
All right. I do want to address openness in City Hall, accessibility. You know, we've heard speakers on that, and I know I haven't been here as long as some of the other commissioners, but I do think it is telling that our building is less accessible than other government buildings. So in that vein, I've had conversations with city management about how we can be more accommodating and welcoming as a city government. I've opened up my office every Tuesday from 11:30 to 2:30. You can schedule an appointment, but you don't need one if you just want to stop by and tell us what issues matter than you, compliment the city on the fine work they're doing, or just need a punching bag for 15 minutes. Come on by. I'll be there. I wanted to address a couple, I think, just easy points that we can do to be more transparent, especially with development projects. A lot of times we hear people say, I didn't know this was coming, like I didn't find out about this in time, so I wanted to move that. We did a couple things. We expanded, we added an additional 500 feet to the perimeter of new projects and public land being sold, and we also notified not just property owners, but the tenants in those areas as those projects come through.
Okay, I'm looking for a little guidance, and also from the commissioners of traditionally how this has been done and advice on how we want to handle it in the past. Do traditionally, when ideas come up, do we give staff the opportunity to provide an analysis and then it comes back so it's not actually implemented night of, or is that how we want to move forward? So Commissioner Matlow, do you want to have a straight up or down vote tonight, which in the past I have noticed that commissioners are hesitant to vote on something that has not had a chance for an analysis to be brought back for review and to think about, or do you want to make a motion for staff to come back with policy recommendations specifically expanding the distribution, radius or whatever, from 1,000 to 1,500 feet? And it sounds like you actually might have a couple more ideas in the realm of development. Is that it?
Right, or just public notification. I mean, I think some of the other ideas we have,
just
we
talk
will
out
need
loud.
some
Let's
staff
work on
analysis.
this. Yeah.
But I think this one, I think these are pretty, straightforward ideas that I think the community wants, and wouldn't really put much burden on the city.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table to go ahead and take action tonight. Is that what you want, Commissioner Matlow? Okay, to expand from 1,000 to 1,500 feet the area of notification. I've got...
There's just one point. Some of these things will have implications for our ordinances that are on the books.
Correct.
So I would recommend, if at all possible, if we could hear any ideas and then have staff actually review the ordinances and see any legal implications of what you're requesting and bring you back a recommendation.
Okay, that's fair.
We don't have a second to the motion either at this point. So just comments. Just talk Mayor Pro Tem and then Commissioner Richardson, I'm coming to you. And then let's see if we could put together an idea for Commissioner Matlow's
Sure. I mean, the
movement to be able to move forward.
The problem with doing it during sharing of ideas is there could be conflicting ordinances that handle the same thing into the city code. So there could be anywhere from one ordinance to city commission policy to multiple ordinances. So usually what's the best way to do that is to bring it up to staff, say, I'm interested in this idea, I'd like to bring it to the commission for action, and then let them give you the background, so when we make a decision, we can amend the ordinances at the same time. And I think that's what the point the city attorney's making. And ordinances are not amended like we had the ordinances tonight. They're not amended like city commission policies. So your ordinances have to have public hearings, they have to have notice requirements, they have to be publicized. They're local laws, legislative laws, so they're not just done on a 3-2 vote. It's a process that has to be followed.
Commissioner Richardson.
I think Commissioner Maddox has made the same point I was going to make, and I was also going to add that there is a fiscal impact as well. And I don't think that we're prepared, no, I don't think, I know we're not prepared to vote tonight because of the issues that Commissioner Maddox has brought up, in addition to whatever the possible fiscal impact is. I understand where you're trying to go, Commissioner Matlow, but I think we ought to give staff the opportunity to vet this and then come back with some recommendations that we can more intelligently vote on.
So, Commissioner Matlow, if you would like to make a motion to have staff provide the analysis and bring it back at the next commission meeting, I would be more than happy to second that motion.
So moved.
Excellent. Any further discussion on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, passes 5-0. Commissioner Matlow, you have the floor.
Okay, so moving on, I think, as government officials, it's our job to listen to everyone. If they want to show up at City Hall to speak, they should have the opportunity. And I know it's been the policy of this board to only allow 30 minutes for public speaking, but I think if somebody shows up and they want to speak, we should allow them the opportunity. And I wanted to move that we alter that policy to allow everyone to speak for as long as they want within the 3 minutes per person guideline.
Motion's on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
There's a second to the motion. Commissioner Richards.
Mr. Mayor, I would inform the commission that the previous commission did address that. The attorney has amended the policy. It is with the treasurer clerk now and has not come back to us. We had that discussion. In the 4 years that I have been on the commission, I only know of one instance where there was some miscommunication and a citizen that was here to speak didn't get that opportunity. But I can tell you previous mayors always took the exception to that 30 minutes, Commissioner Matlow. And like I said, in the 4 years I've been here, Commissioner Maddox, again, can speak to prior to that. But there's only been one instance where that has been an issue because the mayor has that discretion. And it is in policy. So we could take up the policy that's already been drafted by the attorney, or, I mean, but that's where we are at this point with what has already been addressed. If, Mr. Treasurer Clerk, you want to speak to it.
Go ahead and speak, and then Commissioner Williams-Cox will come back.
Well, it was going to be my question. Can you tell us what it is?
I was simply going to let you know that is, as was recommended in the motion, as part of a city commission policy. So I think what we need to do is bring back policy on an agenda item for you to review with some revised language, as was indicated also by Commissioner Richardson. The city attorney and I have looked at some language. I think the policy as it exists probably provides you some of the discretion that you're looking for, but we may be able to make the policy itself friendly like you want the tone to be, so that instead of having a policy that's sort of a strict, here's all that you can do, to be more along the lines of what you're suggesting, that we do have an expanded time. We can either eliminate the time frame, expand the language regarding the discretion of the chair to extend the meeting. We'll bring something back that I think will satisfy you, and that way you'll have something in front of you and you can say, yes, that's what we're after, or no, that's not what we're after.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then the Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, my question has been answered. I wanted to kind of get some more information on where that was, but I also wanted to, I know we're talking, we still have the motion is on the table, right? I wanted to add to that. Having served on the Planning Commission, I always took exception to the fact that notice was only placed in the Tallahassee Democrat. There are other newspapers in town that notice can be provided, especially if you're trying to reach a minority community. And I was told that, there wasn't budget for it. But we have all kinds of ways now to notice folks of things. We have social media. I'm asking that we take that while staff is looking at this particular issue, let's look at other ways that we can notify folks of things that are happening in the city and put it where they can get it. I'll tell you that I'm a technology person, but if I was looking for the agenda for a city commission, you know, you can go to Tallahassee, you can go to talgov.com, but you got to know where to go to find it. And I think that we should look at making it easily accessible for folks who don't know where to find it, so that they can be more engaged. You know, that's our goal, to be more engaged. I also would like to ask, in addition to this, that we look at the possibility of moving city commission meetings, whether it's the official meeting or town hall meeting or whatever the meeting is, to other city facilities around town so that citizens can come to those meetings. It's hard to get disabled or elderly folks parked in Clayman Plaza and up the hill to come to City Hall. This is their government, and they should be able to assess it without having physical hardship to do it. So I'm proposing that we look at taking meetings to the community instead of always relying on them to come here.
Okay. Before I recognize Commissioner Maddox, let me provide a couple of comments, because I love all the ideas that are being presented. Because we have three separate topics here. We have a public comment dealing specifically with the commission meetings. We have public notice, which is that does have a fiscal impact. And also we have to follow state statute, I believe, on how we notice our meetings. And then we have the physical locations of meetings in town halls as well. Commissioner Williams-Cox, I would feel more comfortable if you want to move down this road to have actually three separate motions, because I think there's three different ideas and they're all pretty big in itself.
Okay.
The other thing to keep in mind that might be of interest is that, remember, we do have our workshop coming up in January. And it might be the opportunity to spend some time prior to, over the holiday break, specifically with the city manager and treasurer clerk and the attorney, to really flesh out all of these ideas, give them the opportunity to provide the analysis to bring to the workshop, so that we have the idea, we have a longer period of time to really flesh these ideas out. I can tell you that I am theoretically 150% behind you when it comes to the town hall meetings and being able to move. I also know that from a logistical standpoint and from the legal standpoint of recording and minutes, that it's not as easy as just, let's go down to another facility and have a meeting. There's legal things that we have to do. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page with staff and with the commission, it might take a longer conversation. Commissioner Matlow, and to all my colleagues, let me apologize, because I did break from policy a little bit this evening. Commissioner Matlow, I'm asking for a friendly amendment to your motion as well, because I actually asked for public comment on every single one of the, what I would consider general business items. It's actually item number 13, where we took action. And Commissioner Richardson, Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate you allowing me to do so, because I am very well aware that you know the policy and how it works. But in the spirit, Commissioner Matlow, of what you are discussing when it comes to the public comment, I agree. Right now, the mayor has the opportunity to waive that policy, which Commissioner Richardson accurately described to this body. And if the policy remains the same and we're in that situation, I will always waive it. I also agree with you, Commissioner Matlow, that I think it sends a good message from the new commission to the public of our position on public comment and the importance of it. What I am asking for is a bit of a policy analysis to come back in this to address allowing the public to speak on those individual items under number 13, which would be general business come before, so that we would run the meeting basically how we did tonight, where when there is an item before us that requires action, we always allow the public to also have the opportunity to speak specifically on that item before we have discussion and vote. So I would offer that as a friendly amendment, if that's okay, to your original motion.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to discuss your item separately, because I largely agree, but just for the sake of the motion, then move for the city to come back with a policy amendment that eliminates the 30-minute speaker requirement, and also address the policy of allowing individual speakers to speak on each individual item as they come up.
Sure. So to provide policy analysis specifically on public comment, Commissioner
Mr.
Richardson.
Mayor, so then that obviates then the need for an agenda item where people would address agenda items. Because right now, we have a section on the agenda where speakers can address agenda items, but if they're going to address them, or do you want to have both? So that's another issue to consider.
That's a good point. And before I get to you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would suggest maybe we start out and have both. Just so that if you have the opportunity of somebody who can come early but then has to leave, they still have the opportunity to speak. Or somebody that is coming late because they got to work and they can't get there until the agenda item, they still have the opportunity. Look, if it becomes a mess, of course we can address it. But for now, maybe have both options on the table to provide access.
I just wanted to bring that up for us.
Sure. Mr. Pro Tem.
Traditionally, the sharing of ideas has been when we recognize someone who has passed away or someone that has done good things in the community, or invite someone to a community event, or as Commissioner Ziffer would say, spay new your pets. I've often brought dogs up here to show for adoption. The reason for that, and it's ironic that we're discussing public input, is that when we make policy on the fly under this section, you have no public input.
Right.
So we're making policy now, and no one knew it was coming up. It wasn't on an agenda. It has not been covered by the media. No one has had an opportunity to speak on this, and we're making the policy. So you're right that, Mr. Mayor, that the retreat is the best place for that. And basically at the retreat, we discuss things like that and say, okay, this is what I'd like to move forward, this is what I'd like to move forward. Then the staff comes back with agenda items, and then we have the votes and the discussion on that policy. But most important, everyone knows that it's coming up. They have the opportunity to weigh in one way or the other. They'll know if there's fiscal impact. There's not fiscal impact to what you're discussing, Commissioner Matlow, but there is to having meetings in remote locations. So they'll know the fiscal impact, the pros and cons. Everyone has an opportunity and forewarning to give public access. I'd hate to make policy on the fly without people having that opportunity.
And just to clarify, the motion was to bring back policy for approval.
Bring back now. So Commissioner Williams-Cox.
And I just want to mention to Commissioner Maddox, what I'm asking for is just that, so that when we come to the retreat, staff can come with the information. Because if we go to the retreat and give it to them then we got to wait for them to bring it back. And I'm a data person. I like to give you a heads up. This is what I'd like to see, so that you don't come to find out what I'd like to see. You come with what I've asked for. So that's why I mentioned it today, and I did it along with what Commissioner Matlow mentioned, because it sounded like we were asking staff to do something. So we might as well, I was thinking we can just go ahead and ask staff to do all these things at one time. But I acquiesce, and I don't mind having it dealt with separately, but I do want it to come to the retreat, the information that we're asking for. I understand that there's a fiscal impact. You know, every time you move, there's a fiscal impact. But the people who are paying for that fiscal impact are the folks we're trying to reach by going to them.
Excellent. Well, right now, we do have a motion on the table to bring back recommendations regarding public comment made by Commissioner Matlow that I second. And I think it's appropriate, just if y'all will bear with us, new commissioners, we got ideas that tonight.
We're eager.
We have the opportunity. Okay, so there's a motion on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Commissioner Matlow?
And Diane, would you like me to run down this list, or would you like me to wait until? I'm happy to do it.
Run down your list, Jeremy. Run, Jeremy, run.
Well, just to address the comments that you just previously made, we have had meetings at the Senior Center, and I think, that was well attended, and I attended that meeting. And the community does like to see you present in their neighborhood, and especially we see the community, some pushback, some support of the police station, and there's an area where a lot of people might have transportation issues who really have a concern for that. So I do think there's merit to the idea of having meetings in other places. So I'd like to move that the staff bring back a presentation on the feasibility of using other locations for City Hall meetings.
Okay. There's a motion on the table for the physical location and possible satellite locations for future meetings, and have an analysis be brought back to this commission. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And probably second. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could have staff, when they bring that back, bring back the attendance of our budget meetings when we did that. We used to hold budget meetings in each one of the quadrants, and we discontinued because no one was coming. So that ought to be part of our discussion.
Another matter for discussion. I'd like to add to that we do it at city-owned facilities, so there's no need to rent space.
But the staff will bring it all back in analysis.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Without any further discussion, motion on the table is regarding the physical locations of future meetings. Analysis to be brought back to the commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Commissioner Matlow.
I'd like to discuss the future of internet and connectivity in our city. Something that we've started a community conversation about is creating a municipally owned, for-profit fiber optic broadband network. And if you look at internet connectivity across the world, the United States is falling behind, and then in the United States, Florida is falling behind. And I think we're getting to a point where the internet is absolutely needed for everyday life, because it hasn't been defined as such, but it is a utility, and I think it would be within our bounds to add that to our public utility. We've seen success across the country of this. Chattanooga is a shining example on the Hill, and they're bringing in close to $80 million in revenue just from their internet service that they provide for our city. So thinking about this, and fiber broadband is actually the future of connectivity. It's already here today, but the amount of data that can go over those lines is 20, 30, 40 years out. So what we would really be doing is laying the infrastructure for future technology and future advancement. So I'd like the staff to come back with an analysis of where it's been successful implementing municipal broadband, as well as the challenges we face in Florida specifically to create that system, and what would the first steps be to implement a pilot program that would get to financial profit swiftly.
There's a motion on the table. I would suggest that maybe that be a topic of discussion at the workshop. I think that is a bigger issue than just an agenda item. I mean, you're basically talking about creating a new utility.
Yeah.
And that is going to take a significant amount of staff time, analysis. There's significant financial impact. Not that I don't think it's a great idea, I do. But I think it's a much bigger conversation. Would you be willing to amend your motion to have it be one of the major discussion items at the workshop?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Mr. Mayor, sounds like we're going to have about a week-long workshop.
I know.
Continue along this way.
Well, and
that's what they elected us to do.
That's something.
No, I wasn't elected for a week-long work.
Okay, everybody, take a deep breath.
Was
here.
that a motion, or that was just a request?
Correct.
Okay, request.
Correct. No, a motion to
Second the motion.
put it on the workshop
Second.
agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner Matlow.
So a big issue I know has been on everybody's minds, and especially across the country, is climate change. And we've seen increases in storms, and we see that we need to be proactive in planning that. Last month, Fourth National Climate Assessment pretty much said that the consequences are dire if we don't start to address that. So I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to bring us an update on our current solar system, what we have planned, and where we're going to go from there.
Motion is on the table for an analysis. I'm assuming a report to be brought back for presentation at a commission meeting regarding the proposed solar farm and the current solar farm. Is that?
Yeah, and any other actions we may have planned for post that.
Is it climate change or sustainability?
I think they're one and the same, but we're talking about renewable energy. So where we are specifically on that issue.
Renewable energy
right,
plan.
Yep,
okay,
right.
That's, yes.
All right. I tell you what, and I think we can do this without a motion. Hear me out. But Mr. McGarrett, yesterday during our tour, which by the way was fantastic, thank you.
Thank
I believe you referenced the previous action that the commissions have made in the guiding document of where we are up to here. Can you just make sure that we all have that document to review and possibly make yourselves available for any one-on-one briefings on that issue? Therefore, once we have the knowledge, when we come back at the next meeting in January, Commissioner Matlow, if there's, do you want to just?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, move to just have the same presentation presented publicly so everyone can have a grasp of where we're at.
Okay. So the motion on the table is to have a presentation on our alternative energy plan.
Renewable energy plan.
Renewable energy plan.
Second.
Okay, probably seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner Matlow.
And then I'll hand the floor over to Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, you are recognized.
All right, well, I think, you copied off my paper again? I think Jeremy has, I'm going to return to the sharing of ideas as given to us by our Mayor Pro Tem and his wisdom on the commission. And I'm going to say that kudos to the community conversation that was held last night, to the attendees there. There was a great crowd of folks there. Kudos to our staff, Ashley Edwards and the neighborhood folks, as well as our bike cops were there. And I know Ashley has a long laundry list of things. And then I gave out my work email address, and I received some last night. And I promptly, on my city phone, and I promptly sent them to the city manager after I briefed him on what had occurred. So I know without a doubt that we're going to be able to make a difference and help those citizens trust us in that we will do what we can, and that we cannot do, we will let them know what we can do. And Commissioner Richardson was also there. I saw him from across the room. I wasn't able to get over and high-five you, but Commissioner Richardson was there also. There was great concern in the room, and there was a lot of distrust as well. So we were elected to help restore trust. And the way to do that is, as I said to Ashley, because Ashley and I go way back, way back. And what I said to her is, I know there's some items there where we can get sugar for a dime. And those are the items we want to do in a hurry. Get that sugar for a dime, and then we'll be able to work on the more complex issues. So kudos to the people, the citizens who came out to be engaged. Kudos to our staff who stayed there the whole time to get the information. John Baker and Leanne Watts, and there were some other folks there as well. So, and happy holidays. Happy holidays to you, and however you do what you do. And we'll look forward to seeing you safe, stay safe, and we'll see you in the new year. And thank you all so much for a wonderful, what has it been, 2 weeks? Something like that. And in 2 weeks, I've done things I never thought I'd do, including jumping out of a 5-story building.
You look great. You look great.
Thank you.
She didn't jump, she rappelled, y'all.
Okay, yeah, there's a difference.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items. First, on a good news item, we were named in the top 50 cities in the country for retirees. And I know that's been a huge issue for our Choose Tallahassee initiative to encourage retirees to move to our community. So that's another feather in the cap of the city of Tallahassee. There wasn't much news made of it, but I certainly wanted to announce it here. One thing that has come to my attention recently, it was talked about at the community meeting last night, but I had a resident call me personally, this issue of transition houses. Apparently it's occurring in the Jake Gaither neighborhood, and the resident that called me said one that her sister lives next to, she was called at midnight to warn her that a resident had left the transition house. She's 70, 80 years old and was called at midnight about someone who had left the transition house. I don't know what type of persons are in that transition house, but even the president of the Jake Gaither neighborhood last night said that someone who had left a transition house was arrested in her backyard about midnight. And when she went out to inquire, the police told her, hey, you need to go back in your house, and never explained to her. So, and in the research that AK did for me on this, apparently these things are overseen they're regulated by the state of Florida. And we have no control whatsoever over them. But it has become an issue, particularly in the Jake Gaither neighborhood, maybe others, but that was the one that was brought to my attention. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like for us to have a presentation made about these things so we can get on top of it and know more about what our responsibility is in overseeing and regulating these, because it's becoming an issue, at least in that neighborhood. Like I said, I haven't heard it in others, but it's a big issue.
Commissioner Richardson, if you were formally asking for a presentation to be made, I am behind you 100%.
Okay.
And I will second the motion. Just go ahead and make it official. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, passes 5-0. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson.
The other issue, Mr. Chair, and I spoke, and I know you all have met with this group as I have, and I've spoken to the city manager about it, the neighborhoods surrounding Midtown that have concerns about the proposal for the 5-story parking garage. I think their concerns are very legitimate, and what I'd like to see us do is slow down that process and involve much more community input than we have. I think we might come up with a better plan than what's being proposed, but I at least want to give them the opportunity to have more input into how we proceed forward with that process. So I'd make that as a motion. We haven't typically made it as a motion, but I'll make it as a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion on the table made by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox, and I got to be honest with you, Commissioner Richardson, you caught me on this one because I haven't even had the briefing yet on this issue until tomorrow. So
okay.
I am not familiar with the. Tell me, what is the timeline, Mr. Goad, on when the park? I have met with a couple of residents. I'm familiar with the concerns, but I haven't had the formal briefing. What is are you going to bring something back in January? Is that?
That's my intention, Mr. Mayor. This topic has been on the table for some time now. I'd say a couple of years. Actually, it's not a new discussion, but it's been going for some time. We issued an RFP. We have those proposals. Those proposals have been evaluated. I was not comfortable bringing that forward yet, and it was my intention to brief you to make sure that all of you are engaged in the matter. You hear what the issues are. I know some of the residents in the neighboring area have shared their thoughts with you, so I think it's only appropriate for me to bring that to you guys, brief you, bring it to a commission meeting, and move forward with that pace.
Okay. So the motion on the table would be to suspend the activity at our next commission meeting indefinitely?
Well, just to give the community, the neighborhoods, an opportunity to have more input into that recommendation. And they came up with, what I thought was some very legitimate possible alternatives, just something for us to explore, aside from a 5-story.
Do you want to postpone a month, 2 months? If the manager was going to bring it back, do you want to just postpone indefinitely? What would you like to do, Commissioner?
At least a couple of months,
Okay.
I would think.
Sounds
And then
great.
we reach out to the neighborhoods and allow them to give us some input.
Okay.
They're not opposed to it categorically, but just feel like they've been left out of the process.
Understand.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
If I could just add a little clarity, Mayor, Commissioners, my preference would be to make sure we engage with you, we brief you, we bring an item back to you for your consideration and discussion. You give us general direction, and then at that point, I think we would be well prepared to go and work with the neighborhoods, and we would let them know that's our process, to make sure you're giving us the direction you feel most appropriate based on the topic itself, if you're comfortable with that.
I'd be comfortable with that, as long as we give them the opportunity to give us input before we adopt a formal recommendation.
Okay, so Commissioner Richardson, I don't know if we need a motion for that. I think we're on track there.
Yeah, okay.
But your comments are well noted, and I think that your message is loud and clear.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other item, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to have a time limit for speakers, I think we need to adhere to that. because if we start allowing, well, give me another minute, give me 3 more minutes, then it's very difficult to ask others to adhere to that 3-minute limit. So just that recommendation.
I agree. Is that the voice of reason and experience down there at the other end?
And then the last item, Mr. Mayor, we talked about government accessibility. I know that Mr. Sims has been limited in his access to City Hall, and I know that there were some conditions placed on his accessing City Hall. It is my understanding that he lived up to those conditions. It was supposed to be for a 6-month period of time, and now it's been extended indefinitely. I'm not sure that we want to do that, to limit any individual citizen's access to City Hall unless there is a very legitimate reason for it. And if we put conditions on that access because of previous actions and those conditions were lived up to, then I think that person ought to have, as any other citizen would have, access to City Hall without restrictions. And so I want us to review that, direct the city manager to review that, and let us know what his position would be and how we go forward with addressing that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Commissioner, I'd like to work with the city attorney on this matter.
Okay.
I think we probably need other consideration to make sure we give you a full summary of the issue and make sure that we're on solid footing. We want to make sure we provide full access to every citizen.
Okay.
But I want to do it in a way that's safe for all of the employees of the city, that's safe for everyone. And I'd like to work with the city attorney with your blessing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Commissioner Richardson?
I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I piggyback on that? I know I've
Commissioner
already
Williams-Cox.
spoken, but since city manager responded, I want, in working with the city attorney, let's make sure we do equal and fair treatment, because I have sat in commission meetings and heard some accusations made racially, and we do not want to go down that path. So whatever we do, let's make sure that it is, and I know you'll do it. I know you'll do it, Reese. I'm not saying it. Make sure that it's warranted, merited, and fair. Okay.
Wonderful. Commissioners, I have 2 items to bring. Number 1, I will be bringing forward a policy that I'm going to be working with the city manager's office on regarding the lobbying contract. And I am under the belief that our city will be better served, and you as individual commissioners and as collectively, if we move the management of the lobbying contracts out of the mayor's office, under the city management's office. Over the holiday break, I'll be working with the city manager so that he could put together the plan of exactly how the city of Tallahassee will be working with our state and federal lobbyists to make sure that we get maximum benefit and we all receive information in a timely manner. We all participate in all activities. Therefore, we will all be representing the citizens best of our ability. It does have a significant financial impact. It will be a budget realignment of $180,000 out of my budget back under general revenue in the city manager's budget. So that will be part of the recommendation that will come before you at the January meeting. So I just want to let you know that is not an item that I'm going to ask you to obviously take a position on tonight, because it deals with $180,000 realignment, and you need to have the opportunity to completely look over it. But I am strongly recommending that we do make that motion when the time is appropriate to move. Number 2, I'm looking for some input, especially from Mayor Pro Tem Maddox. And Commissioner Richardson, were you here during the last inauguration for Governor Scott? No. So you were the only one. So, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm looking for your recommendation. So here's the situation that we're in, is that we are all making great strides. Election's over. We are going to have an inauguration to be great, willing, working partners as the city government. With the inauguration, there are always things that come up, whether it's permitting to shut down streets, a parade, little things here and there. My concern as mayor is that we do not meet again until after the inauguration. And if there is action that needs to take place between now and then that the city manager needs to do in order to work with the inaugural committee so that we have a successful inauguration. We are not going to be in a position to make any policy recommendations. So, because we're not meeting. So I have asked the city manager, are there specific policy or budget items regarding inauguration that we should address now? Or is Madam Attorney, is there a certain policy language that we could consider and possibly adopt that provides flexibility for the city manager to be able to work with? For instance, what if the inaugural committee comes back and says, we want to have a parade? And it's a short enough time, city manager is going to have to work with law enforcement. City manager is going to have to work with shutting down the streets. They have to apply for the permit. We have to expedite the process. You understand what I'm saying? There might be budgetary considerations. There might be policy consideration to make sure they can take place. So I am looking for guidance. I am looking for recommendations and discussion of how we could best position the city and the city manager and the city attorney. So over the course of the next month, if something comes up in regards to the inauguration, we are prepared and planned. Does that make sense? Comment?
Yeah, in the past, the city manager has had the ability to accommodate the inauguration committee's wishes. The city manager can expend up to $50,000 without commission approval. Anything that's in addition to that, if it required commission approval, we can call an emergency meeting to do so. I cannot remember any controversy except there was an attempt to rename streets one year on Jefferson and Adams Street, to rename them after candidates had just got elected. And it's not only the governor, it's the governor and cabinet that'll be in. So, I mean, I think the action you're looking for, or the direction, is to tell the city manager that we wish to be a great host. It is a way to showcase Tallahassee.
Correct.
And we want to do everything we can to make sure that people know that we are a welcoming community, and we welcome the new elected officials, the governor and cabinet. And if the inauguration committee has a specific request, we'd like to do everything within our power, as long as it's not extraordinary. And should it become extraordinary, it'll be brought back to us for a decision on an emergency meeting.
Yeah.
Are we all comfortable with that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Mr. Manager, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Madam Attorney? Sounds
That's
great.
the value of institutional knowledge, Mr.
I'm old.
Mayor.
I'm telling you.
I would say, though, that the governor owes Tallahassee an apology, because he said some things on the campaign trail about our city that we're going to show him differently, because now he's coming to our city. We are a safe city.
Well,
statistics show that.
I understand.
So
my goal as the mayor, and I want to work with each one of you, is to change the working environment and to be working partners. Because as I'm telling people, they, especially members of the legislature, they have a mayor of the community where they're from, but as a Floridian, this is their capital city, and we are the mayor and commission of their capital city. And I want to be working partners, and I don't want to have the adversarial relationship. And so I'm going to be making great strides to embrace everyone, transition teams, all of our municipal services. If we can help make the transition easier and more accommodating through lending a helping hand and being there as their city,
absolutely.
I think we should. So, great
If I
point.
could add to that,
Absolutely.
we help state agencies, and state agencies help us all the time.
Right.
Specifically with security, I'm sure, will be asked for police and fire presence during the inauguration, and would gladly support that. And I can tell you, it works the other way too. Capitol Police assisted us with the hot yoga incident. They were on the scene when I was there. They were extremely helpful with some of their equipment. So we have a good relationship with the agencies and work hand in hand.
That's great. I have nothing else. Colleagues, thank you for being patient with me this evening. It's our first meeting. I thought it was a great meeting. If there's no other business before the City Commission, I'd like to note that we have our retreat, our annual retreat, scheduled for January 16th. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Tallahassee City Commission, I believe, is January 30th. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else to come before this body?
No, sir.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Without objection, we stand adjourned.